We go for an aggressive counter farm down, but the opponent reaches a last second charge move. Shadow Annihilape is rocked deep into the red health range, but their final Pokemon is going to be Cradily, and Shadow Annihilape says, "Hi Cradily, bye Cradily," as we nuke them with a close combat, and we take that game. Welcome back to the home of Shadow Pokemon. In today's video, I'm going to be running a very similar team to one I showcased a few days ago, keeping my newly built Shadow Pidgeot as I very much enjoyed using it, and as well the Diggersby, but replacing the former GOAT Shadow Swampert for a Pokemon that can much more easily take down Cradily, one of, if not the most annoying Pokemon to face in the format, and one that previously this team struggled with. Without further ado, let's just get into the battles. Alright, so heading into the first battle, leading Shadow Pidgeot into the channel mascot, Shadow Drapion. Of course, the opponent will be outpacing us to the first charge move, as it does just take 5 Poison Stings to reach a Crunch. I expect they're just going to full send the Crunch, so I shield the first charge move. Now I'm going to go for 2 Gust, fire off the Air Cutter just before they reach Crunch number 2. Air Cutter should be enough damage to get the KO, so the opponent uses a shield. I'm now going to swap into my safe swap here, the Shadow Diggersby, aka Shadow Far Too Thickersby, and we're baiting out a Furret. We're going straight for Scorching Sands. Scorching Sands does respectable damage, and the opponent can fire off a super effective Trailblaze. However, Shadow Diggersby, one of the bulkiest mons in the format, we tank that on the chin. I can now overfarm, fire off a Fire Punch, and from this range, Fire Punch should actually be enough damage to take out the Furret. The opponent going to come in and reveal their final Pokemon, a Shadow Kanto Marowak, but Diggersby once again showing its bulk, able to reach a last second Scorching Sands, dealing big damage and debuffing their attack in the process. I come in with my Annihilape here, realizing the opponent might go for a blind Rock Slide. They don't in the end, but they are debuffed. The opponent goes for the Wham Bam combo play, serving up the Big Mac and the fries, but my huge cojones is going to call that it's just an Aqua Tail. I can now swap out, bank the energy, just in case I need it. The opponent does reach a last second Aqua Tail. However, at this point, it does not matter. I can shield that up, go for a full Gust farm down, taking out both the Drapion and the Marowak, and I'm able to take that game. So going into the next battle, going to see a Guzzlord in the lead. So once again, it's going to stay in this lead matchup here. Wait for the opponent to fire off a charge move, and then I believe I will actually just say swap into my Shadow Diggersby instead of throwing a charge move this time around. And we come in with the Diggersby. The opponent clearly doesn't have a great response. Otherwise, they would have swapped out. So the opponent fires off a charge move. They go for Crunch there. Crunch does actually get into the yellow health range, but that's okay. The opponent swaps into Gastrodon, but we're so far ahead on energy. Scorching Sands does just under 50% of their HP. And once again, the opponent is going to realize that Shadow Diggersby is not to be messed with. Body Slam does not get the KO. We can go for another Scorching Sands there. I wasn't sure if I would live the Mud Slap damage, and the opponent no shield. We get the KO. We flip switch advantage. Now I'm able to align my Shadow Annihilape to the Guzzlord, but unfortunately just barely not able to get that full farm down. The opponent fires off a last second Dragon Claw. The final Pokemon is going to be a Toxapex, so still slightly tricky for us. I'm going to go straight for a Rage Fist, of course, boosting up my attack. The opponent no shields the first one, as of course, with each charge move thrown, I will be dealing more damage. The opponent fires off a Brine just before I reach Rage Fist number 2, and once again, going to throw immediately here. No point over farming. The opponent can't make a catch or anything like that. They actually no shield again. The opponent going for a reverse 2 shield flex here, and going to end up losing. We can go for an Air Cutter. They finally start shielding, but it's too little too late. At this point, we realize we're committing to a full fast move beatdown. The opponent fires off a Brine, but we hang on with 1 HP and a Dream, put them into 1 counter farm down range, and I'm able to take that game. GG's and thanks for playing. We're going to see a Ferrothorn in the lead here. The opponent safe swaps into a Claydol, so they are core broken, but I'm going to make a very nice catch if I do say so myself, as the opponent goes for a Rock Tomb, which is of course resisted up against the Diggersby. I can now overfarm in this matchup, go straight for the Scorching Sands here. Scorching Sands is of course debuffed now, but 2 Scorching Sands will be enough damage to get the KO, and actually I can probably just settle for a Fire Punch here. The opponent is going to go for an Ice Beam. I did not expect that, and as a result, the opponent able to flip switch advantage. That was crazy, but we can come back in with the Pidgeot, and the opponent does not reach another charge move. I'm absolutely loaded. They come back in with the Ferrothorn. Fine with me. I can go for an Air Cutter bait here. An Air Cutter is going to be no shielded by the opponent. You know, I never really usually bait on this channel, and the one time I do, the opponent calls the bait there. Huge balls on this opponent. They fire off the Thunder. I'm going to continue to overfarm. We farm up to over 100 energy before throwing another Air Cutter. Air Cutter actually grabs a shield this time around, and at this point, if they double shield, they are probably weak to Pidgeot in the back, and they do double shield. So So whilst I've still got a very healthy Annihilape, I'm just going to shield here, make sure I preserve the health, and the opponent's going to have a Shadow, well actually a Shadow Kanto Marowak. Can't remember this battle too clearly, but either way, Brave Bird gets the one shot. I can go for the Gust farm down once again, and Shadow Pidgeot, the big boom bird as I like to call it, absolutely dominating in these early battles. But into the next battle, once again facing the channel mascot, and again they're going to fire off a crunch as soon as they get there. I'm going to respect the damage. The opponent does full send the crunch, and again they don't get a debuff. So again, we play out exactly the same. This time they actually fire off an Aqua Tail here, so I can no shield this. I don't mind that at all. We are going to go for the Air Cutter, and from this range, Air Cutter is going to get the KO. No boost there, but they come in with a Wigglytuff. So, of course, I'm not going to swap out here, just going to stay in with the Pidgeot. Air Cutter is going to be no shielded. We finally get the boost, but obviously completely pointless there as we go down to one charm. And at this point, we realize down a shield, up against Shadow Annihilape, there was nothing we could do, and so I just concede the match. But into the next battle, see a great lead as the opponent running Serperior. They're going to say swap into Talonflame, and because they're one turn behind, usually that would be good timing for the opponent, but they end up throwing on the worst timing as they give us a full Gust in for free. At this point, we are now so far ahead on energy. We go for the charge move, but I'm actually going to swap into my Shadow Diggersby. Realizing here, of course, I can commit to a full farm down if they go for the Brave Bird and then come out with a lot of energy as well. And these fire punches are not to be messed with. We're going to go for back-to-back fire punches here. The opponent probably going to let the first one go through. Fire punch does about 40% of their HP, maybe just slightly less, and they can actually commit to a full farm down. However, it doesn't really matter. This Serperior is pretty much gone. We are going to wait out the switch clock here. Not really sure if I want to blind throw a charge view straight away. I am going to come in with the Pidgeot, go straight for the Air Cutter here. Of course, Air Cutter will be enough damage to get the KO. No boost once again. They come in with a Typhlosion, and we are going to bank the energy there. We also avoid taking the damage from that Incinerate, but actually, it does not matter as the damage from the fast moves will be enough damage here to actually take out this Typhlosion. Of course, they will get the KO with the Thunder Punch, but one more Gust takes out the Typhlosion, and I'm able to take that game. Into the next battle, another Shadow Drapion here. Of course, Shadow Drapion, when I used to run it, was probably an anti-meta pick, very fun to play. Now it's on basically every single team here. I might need to get a new channel mascot if I'm honest, because I can't be representing the most common Pokemon in this meta. But either way, we full send the Brave Bird. We're now going to swap into Diggersby. We put them into range where we can just go for a Fire Punch. Of course, Fire Punch won't quite get the KO here, but I can just go for a full Quick Attack farm down. So I'm going to overfarm here. I'm actually going to farm up to 100 energy before throwing a charge move. The opponent fires off another Foul Play. Foul Play not going to do much damage. We get to 100 energy, so going for the Fire Punch, we're actually going to slightly undercharge this, and Fire Punch still gets the KO anyways, but that's okay. Let's see what the opponent wants to do. They are going to come in with a Cradily. So of course Cradily was problematic for this team before I switched it out for Annihilape in the back, and now Annihilape is just going to completely shut this thing down. I've already debuffed their attack, so the opponent going to go for a Grass Knot. Grass Knot does respectable damage. They swap back into Shadow Drapion, but I am of course going to resist the Poison Sting damage. I'm going straight for close combat. It gets the KO there, and this game is gonna be over. The opponent trying to commit to a full Bullet Seed farm down, but they're taking too much damage from those counters. They shield up the Rage Fist, and at this point we can come in with the Diggersby, just sponge the damage, and I will be able to Gust farm them down with the Pidgeot. We're gonna wait out the switch clock here. Nope, never mind. We're actually gonna come in with the Pidgeot. The opponent doesn't throw straight away here, which means the Gust will register. It takes out Cradily, and I'm able to take that game. Going into next battle, going up against the GOAT himself, Shadow Swampert, and again they will reach a charge move after just 5 mud shots. So again, they just barely outpace us. Gonna shield the first move, gonna go for the Air Cutter, throwing just before they reach Hydro Cannon number 2. And at this fight, of course, we can't really swap into Diggersby, but never mind, the opponent is going to no shield. And that's great for me. Now we can just stay in with the Pidgeot. I can go straight for an Air Cutter once again. I'm already boosted. We then swap into our Shadow Diggersby just to sponge the damage here, as even a Brave Bird will not be enough damage to take out Diggersby. So we're going for a Fire Punch. Fire Punch can be no shielded. And at this point, I'm just going to no shield here. The opponent is going to go for an Ancient Power Bait. That is laughable damage there. Again, I'm calling that they're not going for the Brave Bird. The opponent does full send it, and they do get the KO. But at this point, it doesn't matter. They've debuffed their defense. I can come in with either Pokemon, go for a farm down, but they've got Galarian Weezing in the back. So I'm going for an Air Cutter straight away. I kind of need the boost here. Air Cutter, gonna be shielded, and we don't get the boost. At this point, I'm going to shield. I have to shield this as the opponent fires off a brutal swing. I need the gust damage, but I actually don't get another gust through. The opponent goes for another brutal swing, taking us out, but Shadow Annihilape is going to, of course, resist the sludge. Brutal swing is neutral here. Do we have any play left? We are going for the Rage Fist straight away. I need to boost up my attack here. Counters are double resisted. Rage Fist actually gets the KO, and I'm able to counter, farm down Galarian Moltres to take that game. Into next battle, a great lead for me as we're going to see a Jumpluff in the lead. The opponent's going to stay in this matchup here. I'm actually going to shield this charge move. The opponent probably going to go straight for an acrobatics. Nope, they actually go for an Aerial Ace there. Not sure if they're running double flying moveset or if they've baited me with an Aerial Ace. But either way, we go for the Air Cutter. Air Cutter going to get the boost. And at this point, I'm going to double shield. They are clearly very weak to the Pidgeot. It is just another Aerial Ace, so probably on eligible as the other move, but it doesn't really matter. They come in with a Dunsparce. We are boosted. We're going straight for Brave Bird. Brave Bird grabs the final shield from the opponent. I can now save swap into my Diggersby, and this is a great matchup. Of course, resisting the rollout damage. The opponent fires off a Drill Run, really not doing much damage whatsoever. Going to continue to overfarm here, just in case the opponent does swap out of this matchup here. The opponent is going to stay in with the Dunsparce, so we can go straight for Scorching Sands. Scorching Sands, number 1, does big damage, and the opponent comes in with their final Pokemon, and the reason why they could not swap out of that lead matchup because they've got a Gastrodon in the back. We go for Scorching Sands, debuffing their attack, and the opponent has to fire off a charge move here. This time around, Body Slam should be enough damage to take out the Diggersby, but it doesn't matter at this point. We can come in with the Shadow Pidgeot. Body Slam not going to be enough to KO because we have debuffed their attack here, and I can now just commit to a full Gust farm down. But actually, nope, never mind. We are going to go for the farm down there. I don't remember doing that, but either way, we're going to go for the Brave Bird. Brave Bird takes out the Dunsparce. I didn't even need to use my Annihilape, and I'm able to take that game. Into next battle, another great lead matchup for me. The opponent's going to save swap into a Mandibuzz. So happy to stay in this matchup. The opponent will fire a charge move first. I'm going to farm up at least to a Brave Bird before going for a potential Air Cutter bait here. So we are going... Nope, never mind. You guys know I never bait on the channel. I am full sending the Brave Bird. Brave Bird is going to do huge damage. Unfortunately, not quite enough damage to get the KO. So I swap back into my Diggersby. The opponent is going to go for an Aerial Ace there, which doesn't do much damage. I can now go for a quick attack farm down. The opponent's going to come back in with the Gastrodon, but again, we are so far ahead on energy. I end up throwing on really poor timing there. Not really sure how that happened, but either way, Scorching Sands, again, going to do just under 50% of their HP, and the opponent has to commit to an Earth Power, and even then, that might not be enough damage to get the KO. The opponent goes for a Body Slam bait there. That is definitely a misplay, as now I can reach a second Scorching Sands. Scorching Sands is going to be shielded by the opponent. They still have to throw a charge move, as I've just debuffed their attack here, and I'm able to reach another Scorching Sands. Shadow Diggersby putting in so much work in this battle. We grab the final shield from the opponent. The opponent swaps into a Sandslash, but that is going to be game over. We come in with an Annihilate. The opponent sees the writing on the wall. Shout out to the GOAT, Homesize Henry, for that quote, and they just concede the match. Into next battle, a much more neutral lead as we see Azumarill here. And actually, Azumarill is pretty good up against my backline, so I will be forced to stay in. Of course, the opponent probably going to be on Ice Beam. They fire off the Ice Beam straight away. We're going to go for good timing here, going for 2 Gusts, and then firing off the Brave Bird. Brave Bird is going to unfortunately be shielded by the Azumarill, and again, I'm not actually able to swap out and catch the charge move there. That is really unfortunate, so I'm forced to double shield. I'm now going to go for 2 Gusts once again, and again, full sending the Brave Bird. No baits on this channel. Brave Bird is going to connect this time around. The opponent comes in with a Shadow Kanto Marowak. We were 4 stages debuff there, so I do just swap out immediately into the Shadow Diggersby, but this is still a fine matchup. The opponent goes for a Bone Club. I'm going to go for 1 Mud Shot, fire off the Scorching Sands, making sure to throw on good timing. Scorching Sands going to be no shielded by the opponent, and we can reach a Fire Punch here as the opponent does not throw a charge move. Instead, it looks like they're committing to a full Mud Slap farm down. The opponent will just... Actually, no, they're going to pussy out of that farm down, Pokemon, fire off a Bone Club. They kind of shit their pants there. So we're going to come in with the Annihilate, go for the counter farm down, but the opponent has a Corsola in the back, and this could be tricky for us because, of course, they do have Power Gem coverage, Rock coverage for our Pidgeot. So we go for the Rage Fist. Rage Fist does big damage, and Annihilate. Oh, just not able to reach the last second Rage Fist there. And of course, they probably had Power Gem there, so I just concede the match. But into the next battle, we see a Galarian Weezing in the lead. So another neutral matchup for us. Again, they will outpace us to the first charge move. We actually just continue to overfarm here, expecting the opponent possibly to try and throw on CMP. They fire off the Sludge there. Fine with me. I'm actually going to, unfortunately, throw on CMP this time around, and we lose CMP. So the opponent goes for another Sludge. We are going for the Air Cutter, and from this range, Air Cutter will easily get the KO. No, never mind. I said easily get the KO, and we didn't even get the KO. But the opponent comes in with a Sableye. They're, of course, doing double resisted Shadow Claw damage. So I'm going to fire off the Air Cutter, grab a shield, and then swap into my Diggersby. And we're just going to sponge the damage very comfortably. They go for Foul Play, not doing much damage. And again, we are double resisting the fast move pressure here. So gonna no shield once again, going to overfarm just slightly, going for the Scorching Sands here. Scorching Sands should actually be enough damage here to get the KO, so the opponent uses their final shield before swapping back into Galarian Weezing, but I actually don't mind this. This will take out the Weezing here. The opponent does have quite a lot of energy on their Sableye, but we've got a charge move on our Pidgeot anyway, so the opponent comes back in with the Sableye. They're gonna fire for charge move just before we do reach a Fire Punch, and of course, Foul Play easily takes us out from that range. I'm going to come in with the Pidgeot, and actually, no, I was one away, but I'm able to reach an Air Cutter. Air Cutter from this range takes out the Sableye, and the opponent's going to have a Swampert in the back, and of course, we already know what's going to happen. The opponent already knows what's going to happen as well, so they just concede the match. Into the next battle, awful lead matchup for me. I'm going to swap into the Diggersby. A little bit of a core breaker here, but of course I do have Fire Punch, which is going to hit for double super effective damage. The opponent goes for Ice Punch. Diggersby is the damage sponge here. Not really sure what happened there. That looked like we got locked into a CMP tie, but actually it wasn't at all, and they come in with a Galissapod. So yeah, very strange, and they also got an extra fast move through as well. That was very strange. At this point, I'm just going to say, you know what, Diggersby, you can go down there, mate. We're going to come in with the Pidgeot, and I will no shield the first charge move here. I think I should be able to just go for a full gust farm down, and I'm able to get that farm down. The opponent should be switch locked as they stayed in with their Alone in Sandslash for a while, so they wait out the switch clock. We can come in, and the opponent is able to swap out now. And I realized, honestly, without Ice Punch there, I've just got no chance, so I'm just going to concede the match. But into the next battle, GG's to opponent, by the way. We're going to see a Malamar in the lead, so we are going to stay in this matchup. And again, they should be able to outpace us to the charge move. They do overfarm, but they throw just before we do reach a charge move. So we are now going to overfarm as well. Fire off the Air Cutter. Unfortunately, Air Cutter doesn't really do much damage, so Air Cutter will not be enough damage to get the KO, but we do grab a shield. But unfortunately, again, no boost here. So gonna no shield. Just gonna let the Foul Play take us out there. Of course, Sidewave going to be super effective up against my Shadow Annihilape, so we come in with the Diggersby. Gonna no shield. No, I'm going to shield the first charge move here, as the opponent is going to bait with a Foul Play, which is unfortunate. And I'm going to overfarm here. Fire off a Fire Punch just before they do reach a Superpower. Fire Punch going to be shielded. And at this point, I did think about swapping into Annihilape to try and catch a Superpower. But in the end, I'm just going to no shield. Superpower doesn't get the KO. I'm able to snipe with my Shadow Annihilape here. And let's see what Annihilape can do. The opponent is going to wait out. They're going to come in with an Azumarill here, which is obviously not ideal, but I am up a shield. I'm going for the Rage Fist straight away. Rage Fist, not going to do much damage the first time I used it, but it is going to boost up my attack. So at this point, I'm definitely going to use my shield here. The opponent is going to go for an Ice Beam bait, which is unfortunate, but honestly, at this point, Ice Beam probably would get the KO. I'm now going to go for the Close Combat. This is resisted damage, but I'm boosted, and Close Combat takes out Azum. No, it actually doesn't. Oh, what on earth is that? We're going to come back in with the Diggersby, but they've got a Registeel in the back. Does Diggersby have a chance here? I'm going for the Scorching Sands. Scorching Sands does about 50% of their HP, drops their attack, and I'm able to reach another Scorching Sands just before they reach the charge move. Scorching Sands takes out the Registeel, and one quick attack takes out Azumarill, and somehow Shadow Thickersby able to clutch up that win for me and take that game. But into the next battle, we're going to see another Galarian Weezing in the lead. Very unlikely they go for an overheat or a play rough here, so I'm going to no shield. It's just a brutal swing bait there, but they can actually outpace me to another charge move before I can fire off an air cutter. At this point, now I'm going to farm up 2 back-to-back charge moves. We've seen this already, actually. Air cutter won't quite get the KO from this range. And no, never mind, it does get the KO. Maybe I was switching, I was getting the 2 battles mixed up there. But either way, they're going to come in with a Swampert, and this time I am baiting. I've just boosted up my attack here. Pidgeot honestly could go on a rampage, and we are going to see the opponent use a shield. I kind of want to shield here. I am going to shield here. We're boosted. We're now going to go for 1 more gust, fire off the air cutter before the opponent can reach another charge move. And since we're boosted, air cutter is going to grab the final shield from the opponent. And at this point, of course, all shields are down on my end. The opponent goes for a Hydro Cannon here. We can come in with the Annihilape and commit to a full counter farm down. Now, the opponent does reach a last-second charge move, but that's okay with me. The opponent is going to go for a Hydro Cannon, rocking us deep into the red health range, but they've got Cradily in the back, and Shadow Annihilape saying, "Hi, Cradily, bye, Cradily." We get the one-shot with the close combat, 1 more counter, farms down the Swampert, and I'm able to take that game. Into the next battle, we see a Sableye in the lead, so the opponent is actually just going to go straight for a foul play. I'm still going to shield the first charge move here, as Pidgeot is reasonably glassy, but we're now going to overfarm, go for an air cutter, just before the opponent reaches a charge move, but they actually catch it onto a Clodsire. So we go for the air cutter. I'm actually going to stay in now because I can obviously tank the poison stings fairly comfortably, and then I bank a ton of energy farming up to the Brave Bird before swapping into my Shadow Diggersby, and you can see even 2 Earthquakes will not be enough damage to take us out here. I'm going to fire for Scorching Sands just before the opponent reaches another Earthquake. Scorching Sands doesn't get the KO there. That is incredibly painful, but the opponent goes for an Earthquake. Of course, that kind of puts us into farm down range for the Sableye, but they come in with their Lapras instead. So we're going for Scorching Sands once again. Scorching Sands gonna be no-shielded by the opponent. We drop their attack, and now things are looking really good. The opponent swaps instantly into Sableye. I'm gonna no-shield this. I can live a foul play pretty comfortably here, or at least to the point where they will not be able to farm me down. And actually, I can go for the Gust farm down. We've got back-to-back air cutters, so I'm firing off the first one. Air cutter number 1 grabs a shield. I commit to the Brave Bird, and I'm actually able to get there in time. So Brave Bird is going to grab the final shield there. We can now come in with the Annihilape, and I can actually no-shield the first charge move. The opponent does go for the Ice Beam. That is their win condition. And they actually pull it off there. Oh my gosh, what a potato play I just made there. I thought they were just going to go for the Sparkling Aria. So I no-shielded, and as a result, they can farm me down. But into the next battle, the opponent safe swaps into Guzzlord. I'm able to respond with my Shadow Annihilape, commit 1 shield, and go for a huge counter farm down, coming out with a ton of energy. They come in with a Marowak. We're going straight for Rage Fist here, boosting up our attack. The opponent no-shields the first move, and at this point, I can just go straight Rage Fist here. Going to double boost my attack. Rage Fist number 2 is going to be shielded by the opponent. These counters absolutely shredding through the Marowak. And of course, the opponent probably going to have Rock Slide full coverage, so I actually come in with the Diggersby just to sponge the damage here. The opponent fires off a Bone Club, which is the right move to go for in this matchup, but then I swap, I catch the next Bone Club onto the Shadow Pidgeot. This is double resisted damage. It doesn't do much damage. They come in with a Swallow, but of course, they're going to be on Mud Shot, so I can just shield up the charge move, overfarm considerably. They full send the Ice Beam there, go straight for a Brave Bird here. Does the opponent respect the damage? Brave Bird goes unshielded. Again, they live with 1 HP and a Dream, but I'm able to take that game.